Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Pride Perspectives, a conversation with the community. And we are happy for you joining us tonight because this is one of our probably more deliberate evenings for us. The next 60 minutes or so is all about why Trinity-Pawling and basically a virtual open house for those who have registered for the night and are joining us right now, and as well for the families that can't make it tonight and will be seeing this recorded in the coming days. So our Pride Perspectives, they have been going on since April. And for those who might be the first one you're joining, we have a great slew of recordings all the way going back to actually April 29th. And so conversations with alumni, school leaders, students, parents. So a lot of great information. And those can be found right on our website, as well as on our YouTube channel, which you can, of course, find other great videos that are student-led as well. So this is an opportunity, these Pride Perspectives are an opportunity for you to see the school, obviously in a different light. For a lot of you who have not been able to be to campus yet, we understand that. But for those of you who are chiming in for this and here, we will be opening up the visits on November 23rd. So please contact the admissions office so that you can come see the campus for yourself. So those begin on November 23rd. So tonight, as I said, we're going to be talking about why Trinity-Pawling and the advantages of Trinity-Pawling and the education that you can get here as a high school, middle school student. And we have a great group of panelists from all the way at the top with Headmaster Taylor to, I think, Michael O'Rourke, who's our youngest, Harry Clark, who's our youngest class of 2023. With a couple of faculty members, new students, old students, and it'll be great to hear from all of them. So webinar 101, for those who this might be new, there is a Q&A button on your screen. And if at any point during the evening you have a question, please do not hesitate to type in your question in the Q&A box. And we will get to that either immediately. I might interrupt someone who is finishing up talking and get that question answered because it might be relevant, or we might hold it off until the end where we kind of dive into the Q&A. And I also want to thank those who sent in questions while you were registering, and we will get to those as well if we have time. So this is all time contingent because it's 7:03. And I hope and I promised to a couple of these young men who have to go to study hall soon that this will be an 8 o'clock departure. So without further ado, and I welcome Bill Taylor, our head of school, who has been back here at Trinity-Pawling for 6 years. So Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Burlington, and welcome to all of you who are gathered this evening and taking time out of your schedules to learn more about Trinity-Pawling. Mr. Burlington mentioned that I've been back at Trinity-Pawling for 6 years. That presupposes that I was here at some other point, and I was here for the first 13 years of my career, from 1988 to 2001, and then I left and I was the head of a day school for 14 years before coming back in 2015. And it's been an honor to be able to come back. And I remember meeting Mr. Burlington when he was a prospective student, like some of you here this evening. And we interviewed and talked about Trinity-Pawling, way back in the early 1990s. Undoubtedly, in some form or fashion, what I said to the young Mr. Burlington, all of 8th grade, was some version of learning at Trinity-Pawling happens best when it happens together, when it happens in community with one another. And that's true of all schools. That's true of all boarding schools. Learning takes place better when it's interactive. Uh, there are various different components, though, to the Trinity-Pawling experience that, in my opinion, during the course of my career, amplify that statement in ways that are not only meaningful but also transformative in the lives of the students here. That there are incredible life changes that happen over time, not just over the time that a student is here. One of the great advantages that I have in my position is that I get to interact uh, quite frequently with alumni. And so I get to hear about the impact that the school has had on their lives, not only when they were students here, but on their lives after Trinity-Pawling. And it is the type of experience that continues to reveal itself in the lives of our graduates well after they've left here as graduates. And I like it to sort of planting seeds, and the seeds that are cultivated at Trinity-Pawling. Some begin to germinate and to bloom right here. Many of them do after just a short time here. But then there are seeds that take a while to cultivate, and the young men who are the graduates of the school begin to realize that they've learned things during their time here, whether it was 1 year, 2 years, 4 years, or in the case of students uh, like Mike here, who began in middle school, um, that happened over a longer period of time. Um, and that, that's very special and very powerful. Um, and so when we were remote last spring, uh, you know, I thought we did it well. I thought we did it as well as we could have. But we did it well because we had already spent 2/3 of the year really honing in on those relationships and building those relationships and solidifying those relationships. So when we had to pivot like everybody else to remote, there was a deep level of knowledge and awareness from the teachers of the students, but the students of the teachers and their teaching style and what the expectations were. And the fabric of community was so deep uh, that that really gave us extra momentum going into that remote period. But just as evident as that was last spring, that we had done the heavy lifting in the fall of the winter, it was just as clear by the time we got through with the spring that, that's not sustainable. And it's not sustainable for a place like Trinity-Pawling. We did it well. We needed to do it well, and we did. But we started planning for get everyone back here as soon as we could last spring, because we knew that that was going to be certainly the best interest of the students, even those students like Jude and Nicholas who were not even with us last spring. But the students that were coming, they needed to be here on campus to experience that learning environment in that way. And so that was the essence of building our reopening plan, and really the glue that has bonded everybody together is this awareness that we're all part of this, is all part of the common good. And that's nothing new for Trinity-Pawling. We've been talking about the common good, or as the students talk about it, brotherhood, for years and years and years. And when the boys get up in chapel or speak about what it means to be part of the brotherhood or part of the community, what they will often say is, I know I've got 300 brothers that have my back. And and that really is the same, it's their version and their language of saying that we're all here for the common good. We're building one another, we're supporting one another, and so forth. So with that bond in place, we've been at it for 8 weeks. I think this is maybe our 9th week of being back with students on campus, finishing this will be the end of our 8th week of classes. And we've, built some very strong momentum. We're going to November 20th. And then we're going to have Thanksgiving break. And then we've got a remote period built in between Thanksgiving and Christmas, just out of, the abundance of safety of coming and going to campus. And we'll talk a little bit about what that is like, because that sort of captures part of our learning environment. But when I talk about the common good or learning happens in community, it really is emphasizing and underscoring the importance that we place on relationships, and getting to know what each individual student's gifts and talents are, and being able to teach that awareness to the students. And that awareness begins with the understanding that they have gifts and talents, that each person has been given these gifts and talents, and it's part of this remarkable journey in this stage of life to be able to discover what those gifts and talents are, and to be able to discover that you have different gifts and talents, and so forth. And that happens when you have wonderful faculty as guides and catalysts in this process. And we've got 2 wonderful faculty members here this evening. I'm going to ask Mr. Weber to talk a little bit about the power of relationships, and how that is that's sort of a foundational aspect for the type of growth that happens here for the students. And Mr. Weber can speak certainly as a faculty member who's been here since 2003, but also as a past parent, because 2 of his sons are graduates of the school, Larry in class of 2017 and Joe in the class of 2018. So Mr. Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor, and good evening to everybody. As you can see, I'm here for the 2nd time in 2 weeks, live from the chemistry room. And this is not for a backdrop. I actually got kicked out of my own house, speaking of family. My wife says I'm a little bit too loud sometimes on Zoom. I'd like to begin with, I think that Trinity-Pawling for me, when I came here to interview, in a nutshell, was all about people. I think that the people that are in our administration, the folks that are on our staff, the faculty, are absolutely second to none. And I call many of them, most of them, in fact, my best friends. And that relationship in itself makes this community super tight. And the kids know that, and they respond to that. One of the main things that builds, there's a few things that build relationships here. And I think it starts with challenges. Trinity-Pawling constantly puts students in a place to challenge themselves, new experiences, challenge themselves with trying something new, something they've never tried before, to take healthy risks. And I think this is the backbone beyond the classroom of growth. I know from my own son, speaking of him, he was a 3-sport athlete here at varsity sports in all 3. I won't get into that, but he also joined the theater in his sophomore year. And I remember soon after graduation, him looking back at Trinity-Pawling and saying to me that experience, the theater experience, and I thought, he always thought about himself as a sports guy, but it was the theater experience. He said that was the one. That was the best experience that I've had so far in my life. I do a lot of recruiting with families. I sit down with a ton of families. And I always say to them that it's all about your son. It's all about him growing. It's all about him finding what his passions are in life. And we try to give students outside of their, maybe perhaps their main passion, we try to give them new experiences to foster that growth. One of the opportunities that this situation, and by the way, I think that Trinity, this is not part of the question, but I think that Trinity-Pawling, and I'm not tooting our horn, well, a little bit of toot, but I think we've knocked it out of the park in terms of our remote and hybrid combination learning. We're well equipped in the classroom. I don't want to go too far into this, but basically to allow students to engage from afar, from overseas, those that are in quarantine, those that are in the classroom, and bring them all together in an experience that can be still one based on inquiry and one based on hands-on learning. In fact, one of the wins I had recently was with Harry Clark, who's on this call, and you'll hear from him in a bit. It was a big win for me in the classroom in deciding how I was going to do this, as we brought our lab to the students that were in the screen. And the response from the students in the screen was, thank you for doing that. And Harry made the lab and that hands-on experience that he was having, he made that shine through the screen to the boys that were not in the room. But back to a little bit on awareness and vulnerability and being open-minded and so on. This opportunity has also given us a chance to work in smaller groups. And I don't think Trinity-Pawling realized this probably before, and I know that we're going to continue this, but it doesn't give faculty and students the opportunity to work in small groups. What this has done is that the students have come alive, I think, in their ability to take healthy risks in answering difficult questions, answering questions that bring out emotion, sharing stories, sharing challenges. And when you do that, students draw a thread, right, between each other and also between that faculty member that's working with them at time. It's no different than a student working, 2-on-1 or 1-on-1 and extra help, because you're building a relationship, you're building trust. And in the end, that trust, I think, is the key. That trust in relationship is ultimately going to bring out confidence. Confidence in the students, confidence in their ability to communicate, maybe on difficult issues, their self-advocacy, their resourcefulness, their maturity, and their independence, for sure. Those things, I think, are the key to what we do and what we do well. And that's where the growth occurs. And that growth is one that's going to allow them to tackle the challenges that lie ahead, not only just later in high school, but tackling the challenges ahead in college, tackling the job place, and the challenges of building a family. And I tried to cover everything, Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. Well, since Mr. Weber, referenced Harry, Harry, why don't we begin with you? Why don't you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what these relationships mean to you and the way that you've grown in your confidence in a little over a year here.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. So my name is Harry Clark. I'm a sophomore here at Trinity-Pawling. I'm from Newark, New Jersey. And when I first came here, well, I really wanted to come to boarding school. It was a thing in my family. My mom went to boarding school, but I was struggling in middle school. I didn't think, obviously I'm a sophomore now, but in middle school I was struggling. I didn't think I would be able to get anywhere. I was in a really deep, dark place in middle school, and I came here and everything just lit up for me. It was just so many new opportunities for me to take advantage of here at Trinity-Pawling that just made me, I think, as my mom likes to say, a better Christian gentleman, is in her words. But so I think the main thing about relationships here at Trinity-Pawling and opportunities is first off for opportunities. Here, what I learned from past prefect Lucas Hughes was that you have to try new things here. At Trinity-Pawling, there's so many different opportunities for you to grow as not just a man, but as a person as a whole. So trying new things here is a very important aspect of being successful.
Good. Thank you. And Mike, want to have you introduce yourself. I misspoke. I mean, you started in ninth grade. I've met you in middle school. So I've known you since middle school. So Michael, why don't you introduce yourself? And you're a day student. So talk a little bit about your experience, with the relationship piece. How is it hard to get to know your teachers? Is it hard to be able to take advantage of these opportunities?
So I'm Michael O'Rourke. I'm a junior at Tree-Pawling. This is my third year going here. As Mr. Taylor said, I am so I live like 15 minutes down the road. And being a day student this year is a lot different than normal. So normally teacher to student relationships are really close. I mean, instantly it just kind of clicked for me. As soon as it all kind of started and I started like school here, it just clicked, student, no matter like boarder, day student, you're just going to click with your teachers. It's pretty easy actually just to get along with your teachers. But this year it's a little bit different because due to COVID restrictions, it's a little bit different to like meet after school with your teachers. But as Mr. Weber had pointed out to me, online meetings work just as well, if not better, because it's one-on-one. So now I can Zoom call with teachers for extra help or just to talk if I need help in something. And now it's so much more easier because now it's just an email away from a teacher to get on a Zoom call and talk to them.
Just wanted to, Mike, who happens to be your advisor at Trinity-Pawling?
Mr. Weber.
Oh, okay. And
This is my second year with Mr. Weber as my advisor.
Okay. And what is that? How different is that relationship maybe from a guidance counselor that you may have had in middle school? What do you think is that big benefit?
So I would say a difference is that at Trinity-Pawling, so normally we would have like advisee dinners. So now you're going over to like their house or their dorm and like truly meeting them, like it's not just like in school, like, hey, how's it going? How are your grades? It's like a personal level interaction that you get to have with your advisors. And me and Mr. Weber from the beginning as a freshman, actually, I think we just had like a relationship. We just had a couple things in common and now it's grown even more. So I decided to pick him as my advisor after freshman year. So I think it's going really well.
And you get a lot of breakfast sandwiches.
Yes. On Tuesday mornings.
Nicholas, you're a new student. Why don't you introduce yourself, where you're from, and then I'll ask you a question.
Hi, my name is Nicholas Gatton, and I'm a postgraduate, and I'm from Bronx, New York.
Good. So what's it like? You're in my class, so I know you're a good student. You're a hard worker. You're also an athlete. You're a football player. What's it like being here this year when it's not sort of what you may have imagined, but what have you discovered?
I can say that I'm not really I'm starting to get used to it, but I'm not used to this. When I first came here, I was looking forward to maybe having a season as like usual. And also when I first came here, I didn't expect to have some relationships that I have with some of the kids now, because I'm a very quiet kid. I don't regularly talk too much. And it's almost like coming here, the kids kind of like forced me to talk to them, to where like they would invite me to like their lunch table to sit there and talk to them. And it's almost like I'm not the only one that's going through the situation that I'm going through. Everybody else in this school is going through that, and they want you to know that they're there and that you can, like, they're there to help you in whatever you need to do. And also the teachers are here. Like I've never experienced so much help that the teachers give, between the going to them in person, or if I need to make a Zoom call. So I can say that my experience here, I think I've grown a lot, and that I'm glad that I actually came here. So
Thank you. And Jude, you're also a new student. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jude Tapia. I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I'm doing a postgrad here at Trinity-Pawling.
Okay. And as I mentioned, both Jude and Nicholas are in my class, so I've enjoyed getting to know them this year. And Jude, you're from, you're, as you just said, you're from Albuquerque, so you're far away. And so what's it like being here? Everybody's been here most weekends, but I mean, how have you adjusted to sort of the boarding aspect of this? And it takes a while, right?
Yeah. Before coming to Trinity-Pawling, I was the furthest east I've been was probably Dallas, Texas. So coming to New York, it was very different. I was very nervous. But as soon as I stepped on campus, I was greeted by my dorm parent, Mr. Slade Mead, and he was very helpful right away. He made me feel like home. And as weeks started going by and school started, that relationship and that brotherhood really started to make itself appear. And I'm way more comfortable now than I was at the beginning of the year.
Right. Let me just throw something out for all of you, and or you don't all have to answer, but what's it like being in an all boys school?
I'll answer first. So I'm part of the Key Club, so I actually get this question a lot more often. Well, probably not more than you think, but I get it a lot. So the reason why I think an all boys school is just completely different is because everyone's so tight together. Like no one's trying to compete, like trying to look the best or trying to try to be the best. Everyone like forces themselves to be better, but there's no like competition like for like girls or anything. So like no one cares like how you dress or like how you look like showing up to school. Like kids just want to like get good grades and just have a good time. Like no one's really like trying too hard, and like no one's afraid to put themselves out there. And that's like a huge thing that I've noticed, that kids like that maybe you'd see like, oh, that kid's really not going to say much, during class, but they're just going to like evolve into this whole new person by the end of the school year, answering all the questions and just really just really evolving.
Yeah, I was at a public school for all my life until now, and there's about 3,000 kids at my school, so having it just be boys and the population a lot smaller, it's helped with in class, like Mr. Weber said, being able to make connections with your teacher and the students because it's such a small class, and really being the focus rather than just another person in class.
And Jude, what's your role? What the dorm that you're living in? You probably never expected that coming in as a postgrad, you'd be living with freshmen and sophomores. So
Yeah.
what is your role, and what's that experience been like?
So I'm a proctor in my dorm, Dunbar North. There was another proctor, but he ended up having to go back home. So I've just been here not by myself, because these kids I've really made a connection with. They look up to me, and they really like me, I feel like. And I have one from Switzerland, one from Japan, one from Taiwan, and then one from Salt Lake City. So, it's all over the place, but I've got to learn a lot about their culture and what they've been through.
That's great.
Mr. Burlington, you're on mute.
Yeah, Harry, are you back here?
Yeah, I'm back. I don't know what happened.
That's okay. But you've also been here a couple of years, and that experience, I think, how has the all boys experience made you, as Mikey was talking about, flourish and evolve? What do you think has made that happen for you in a different way?
Well, one, I can agree with Mikey with the obvious answer about girls. There's no competition or whatever between the guys here, obviously. But I think one thing that I realized is that everyone here, you can really assume and understand that we all have a common goal, and that's to get somewhere. And I think, which with something such as the effort system, which I'm not going to go super deep in depth into, but something like that, this whole school, that part of the school is very unique, as everyone is trying their hardest to be successful in many different aspects of school so that they can carry that over and make strategies to life. So I think really the main thing is that we all here at Trinity-Pawling have a common goal of being successful. And I think that's what's really driven me and made it easy for the all boys environment.
Burlington, do we have any other questions that are coming in?
Well, yeah, and one of them, I think I would love to gear it right towards Mrs. Lidl, if I can, and maybe that can, add some other depth to this. And just talking about Mrs. Lidl, one of the questions that came in, and please introduce yourself before you answer, but how does the program or curriculum or school, how does the program for kids that need maybe extra help or need potentially help with a paper or just additional support, how does that work in a normal school day and maybe even after a school day is over?
Okay, well, thank you. I'm Roberta Lidl. I'm the director for the Center of Learning Achievement. Very long title for, I am kind of overseeing the support piece for students, especially in the academic arena, but it seems to expand to other places. So not to go into too much detail, but part of the Center for Learning Achievement is some of our signature programs that are specifically designed for students that have specific differences, learning differences, and just need strategy or support or remediation for that. So we have our LEAD program, for our international population, we have our English mastery program. And for students that have challenges with executive function, we have our executive skills program. But beyond that, the biggest thing is the collaboration piece. So my office, I'm in my office, it's in the academic building. And the collaboration between all of our teachers and support staff is amazing. It makes me love my job every single day. Students, if they're struggling in a class, if they're outside of our programs, the teachers are our first line, where they will try to build in extra help. The students will advocate. We will teach them to advocate if they haven't developed that skill. We collaborate constantly to try and find them the skill, help them find the resources that they need. We work with the Gardner Learning Commons. We work with all of the deans. We work with the Dean of Counseling. It's just this amazing network of collaboration. And students know that we have an open door policy. So even if a teacher doesn't teach a specific student, they notice. They're on their radar. It's just it warms my heart to watch the connections that happen with people that aren't strategically placed together. So they might not be in a classroom, but they might have heard something, and they might just see someone off and not engaging, and we'll take that opportunity to have the conversation and to provide what they need.
Ms. Lidl, your son's a graduate of the school, Christopher, 2010. And so what was it like seeing his transformation and growth through his experience here?
Amazing and terrifying. So the funny thing is my son just turned 30 2 days ago. So that it just seems like such a long time ago, but it really wasn't. It was. So my son Christopher gave me the gift of what I do, because he did have a learning difference. And I got to watch him go through that piece. And when he came to Trinity-Pawling, he did go through one of our programs. I was not his teacher. I was not the head of the program then, but I allowed him to skin his knees. That was the best thing that I could do for him. And the unique thing is like Mikey, I am a day student, day teacher. I live 5 minutes from campus. I'm here a lot. But when my son came here, I had him board. I had him live on campus. He participated in the program. And I knew that the teachers were going to take amazing care of his needs and let him skin his knees, so to speak, and learn the resiliency. And he did an amazing job. And he has such fond memories of here. And he did, he did things his way. He spent a lot of time in the theater. He actually built his passions from that. So as a parent, I took the standoff approach because I trust the people that were interacting with him. So he had to learn how to navigate and go to teachers when he needed help, or to get comfortable with the self-advocacy component. Even though I worked here, I was Mrs. Lidl. And if I didn't have him in class, that was my role. So it wasn't, it wasn't my problem if he didn't do something well. He had to navigate it just like anyone else. And I think that was one of the best lessons he ever got. So I value it more than people can know. And I always utilize that story, that him living on campus and being a part of the brotherhood and building those relationships and removing myself, even though I was 5 minutes away. I mean, I tell people this, I packed him up and moved him 5 minutes away with tears in my eyes, like I was sending him across country, because it is giving them the gift of making connections, of finding out who they really are and getting the resilience. So it is such an amazing gift.
So I'm going to exercise my experience as a teacher, and I'm going to go back to my original thesis from about 30 minutes ago about learning happening best here when it happens in community, because we've just spent 30 minutes sort of talking a little bit about what that means and diving much deeper into that word of community. And you didn't hear that word actually that much in these 30 minutes. You heard about relationships, trust, growth, vulnerability, resilience, self-awareness. Those are the aspects of community that are the catalysts here. You heard a little bit about from the students about this being an all boys school, and you heard Harry and Mike says that you're not in competition for attention and things like that. But in terms of the learning environment here in a boys' school, boys are active learners. They're not passive learners. And so we have a very active learning environment that actually ties into those various different aspects of community that I just listed off. But I would say that first and foremost, when we talk about an active learning environment, it starts with self-awareness. Mm-hmm. And it has to start with self-awareness. And then it branches out from there. Because if you're not aware, or you're not in an environment where your teachers are keeping a focus on how you learn best, keeping a focus on what your gifts are, what your gifts and talents are, if you're not in an environment where you're given the opportunity to explore those gifts and talents or try new ones, then you certainly are going to be passive. And we don't want that. Boys don't learn best in that environment. They learn best when they're active. So we want to engage them in this process, first and foremost, of self-awareness. And from there, we build out into lots of different areas of what active learning takes place. You heard Mrs. Lidl talk a little bit about the Center for Learning and Achievement. That's a byproduct of being focused on self-awareness, making sure that we have the resources and the skill sets, the expertise of people like Mrs. Lidl and her team to really be experts on how boys with certain learning differences learn best. I would say that all of our faculty are experts on how boys learn best. And that is to really lean into this idea of self-awareness, to understand that learning happens best for boys when they are really engaged and excited about what they're doing and getting their hands dirty in how they're learning and getting up and about when they can, and being very focused on a holistic approach to education, that boys begin to learn that the same disciplines that have served them well in other areas such as athletics or the arts are the same disciplines that are serving them well in the classroom. And once they become aware of the continuity of all that, it's a opportunity for this sort of exponential growth. And because these are all the same skills, but through challenge, as Mr. Weber mentioned, and trust, as you heard from many of the students, and through safety and vulnerability, that it's all right to take a risk and speak in class. I mean, Jude and Nicholas are in my class. As I said, they're all new students. It was really quiet the first couple weeks. And now more, the guys are talking more. We're starting to engage more. They know me better. I know them better. And the environment is becoming much more dynamic. And that's trust through vulnerability. I mentioned we're beginning to get the faculty focused in on these projects that are going to encapsulate the 2.5 weeks between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And every winter term we begin with interdisciplinary winter projects. It's part of our practicum for civic leadership, another signature program here that has 3 different components. But the interdisciplinary winter project is the sort of the introductory component of this. And it's all about giving boys the exposure to be active in their learning, to choose an area or a focus point that is appealing to them. Faculty will come up with lots of different intriguing, compelling, creative project ideas that are designed to enrich learning, but they culminate with the creation of an original product of some sort. But the key here is that the boys get to choose, and they get to choose something that is appealing to them. And that is also a critical component of, I would say, how all students learn best, boys and girls, but it really works best with boys. When you can give them some autonomy, some choice over the learning. It works very well for girls. Having been a head of a co-ed school, I can say that with confidence. But with boys, when you combine it with the active process, you really can engage them and capture their attention. So it'll be hands-on. Since it's going to be remote, we're going to be doing lots of different check-ins and opportunities for, in teacher speak, scaffolding of skills, but check-ins. But next year, when it's in person, it's going to be, it has always been as dynamic. But the end result is going to be the same. The boys are going to create something that's original, that's going to reflect their learning. It's going to force them to synthesize different skill sets. There's a public speaking component of this. So Nicholas, get ready. You'll have to sort of describe what you've learned, but it's in a situation where there's lots of trust that's been built between the teachers who are working and guiding the boys through this project. And this is just a small aspect of our overall commitment to active learning. And there are other signature programs, the Junior Collaborative Project, the Senior Independent Project, and then individual classroom projects and things like that. But we are a big believer in learning by doing. And that reinforces the overall focus on self-awareness. Again, looping back to this idea of learning happens best when it happens in community. And that self-awareness piece is critical to everything we do.
And Mr. Taylor, if I could, Michael, as we call him Mikey, but Michael, can you talk about your last two winter projects? Because I think it will help the folks on the call. Just again, a lot about your interests, and you don't have to go too in depth, but just a little bit description of both.
Yeah. So my freshman year, they have like a slideshow presentation of all the winter projects. And so we were sitting there in the theater. I was watching through all of them, and then building a fly rod came up with Mr. Fideli. So someone that I didn't really know as like a teacher or anything, but I signed up for it. And so my freshman year, I got to build a fly rod as my winter project. It actually took a lot more time than we thought it was going to. There was many late nights spent in the maker space building that fly rod, but I now use it today. So yeah, I must have done something right. And then my second year, I wanted to incorporate something with fishing because that's one of my enjoyments into my winter project. So Mr. Weber was my advisor, became my advisor, and so we started talking about it. And we decided to create an idea to revamp the pond, I guess, in a way. So we came up with ideas of like what to change with the pond, what can we add, what should we take away, things along these lines. And that's the advantage about TrinityPawling is you may see something on the board that you like, but have like a different perspective to, and a teacher is willing to work on that other perspective with you. And teachers are open to new things just as students are. So new things can happen through winter projects that you maybe not knew that you were interested in, but now you are interested in.
That's great. And I think, this year you'll be going on to the Junior Collaborative Challenge, which will be a challenge in its own. And, again, for a lot of the things that we're talking about and potentially questions that we don't get to answer, I encourage you all to get in touch with the admissions office so that we can answer those specific questions. But if I could ask Mr. Weber or Mrs. Lidl, just I thought a great question, and you both have talked about it a little bit, but what type of student succeeds at Trinity-Pawling? And then also on the flip side of that, when, not if, but when a student does struggle, how do they struggle, or what are they struggling about? So maybe as a parent or a faculty member, and maybe Mrs. Lidl, you could go first.
Sure. So the type of, when a student struggles, there's a lot of interventions. Now, when we say struggle, remember, we're a community. So we look at every aspect. So academic is the easiest to measure. And teachers, and it's almost the easiest interaction or to address. So there's a very clear process that we have, and I will tell you, every time grades come out, I go through whether it's a student in one of my programs or any of our students, I go through and I kind of look for anything that kind of gives me that little dog tilt, the head tilt where you're like, because curiosity often is a little indicator or a little opportunity to even just to meet with somebody, say, hey, are things okay? It's a good checking point. In academics, if they do have more significant challenges, we address that. We'll dive deep. We'll probe. We'll figure out Sometimes it might be just some writing help or something like that, and we can structure that, whether it's within their classes or we can figure out aspects to support them. Sometimes it is a little less purely grade and academic driven. It might be ability to stay on task or just exterior things or making things challenging. And we have all kinds of resources here. And I weekly meet with the Dean of Faculty, or the Dean of Residential Life, the Dean of Students, the Dean of Counseling, and some of my learning specialists. And we always strategize. And we also have weekly meetings with form advisors. So there's this really rich network to make sure that we're not missing anything. I've had coaches come and talk to me. Sometimes I ask coaches, they give us feedback. It might be our dorm parents. We don't miss an opportunity to make sure that our boys are thriving. And I think that's the beauty of this piece. What was the first part of the question there?
Well, actually, no, this is a good transition because I'm gonna go to Mike, Mr. Weber, and just from your experience since 2003, and also with your sons, what type of student succeeds at Trinity-Pawling? What in your vast experience?
My apologies, I was muted. I think the most important thing is for students to allow themselves to dive in, to allow themselves to dig into new material, to dig into new methodology, to allow themselves to take on new experiences. I remember with my ecology class at the beginning of the year, I was opening up a lesson, and I asked them to allow themselves to dig deeper, right? To get beyond the superficial understanding of the material, allow themselves to go into it further, digging deeper with new experiences, like trying the theater, like I said, or getting involved in a new club, to knocking on a faculty's door. That might be a new experience for some students. If they can do those things, they will succeed. In addition, we had a small senior breakout group for chapel a couple weeks ago, and I was going to ask them some difficult questions along the lines of things that are happening in our country right now, and ask them to speak about it. And we ended up getting into toxic masculinity, but I won't go into that. But at the beginning of this, again, I preface it by saying, allow yourself the opportunity to be involved in this conversation. And then later decide or critique whether or not you thought that was valuable. So I think this diving in component is super important. Allowing yourself to do new things, those things together. With regard to struggles, I think it's a simple answer for me. It's a simple answer for my advisees. It's a simple an answer for most kids that are in my classes. Is just bang down doors. And by bang down doors, I mean, you gotta be proactive. You're banging down the door to your faculty residents, or you're knocking on the door of your advisor, or you're knocking on the door of the college counselor. And those are the things that I think the kids will move on to do at the college level as well to be successful.
JP, I'd love to add to that is that not every kid comes to Trinity-Pawling with that skill set, with that ability to just, that feels comfortable. Like Nicholas said, he was a quiet person, and look we've got him on a webinar. So not everybody comes with that. But there are so many models of people being brave and people being vulnerable that they realize that's not, that is not a negative word for boys as it was in the past. So that's a piece when I hear people using the word vulnerability and being able to reach out and to get comfortable in a very uncomfortable thing for them, that's a win for us. That is the unwritten curriculum for us. You know, I always say this, I can teach anybody to read, but those are the pieces. And cycling back to Mr. Taylor's, Headmaster Taylor's thing about self-awareness, that's the curriculum. It's slowly meeting them where they are and slowly getting them to feel comfortable enough to do stuff like this, or to go knock on their teacher's door, or to, hey, speak up for a peer or something like that. So that is the piece. And not everybody comes here with that, but it's amazing how quickly they get in that space.
And I would just add into that, that's why some of these seeds germinate years later.
Mm-hmm.
Because that self-awareness process is a lifelong process. I mean, that's the lifelong learning promise of this experience. And that, that's also part of this success, that this success is an ongoing experience of growth and success.
Well, and I'm not sure, Mr. Taylor, if you noticed just a chat from an alum who is on the call, and he said almost the exact thing. He said, the students on this call remind me how important the skills and values I learned at Trinity-Pawling have helped me navigate and become resilient in the ever-changing world. I need to hire this guy into the admissions office. But that's exactly, and his last, I'm very proud to be a part of the Pride family and brotherhood. So I think I'm going back to that question, and I think from what Mr. Weber said and what Mr. Lidl said, it's almost the same thing, right? It's you're going to succeed if you dive in. You're going to really struggle if you don't, and in that, I think that's, I don't mean to simplify what they said, but that's, being able to dig in and get your fingernails dirty is going to make you as successful as anyone at this school. So we have a couple more questions. And Jude and Nick, I want to ask you, because it revolves around just community with day and boarding, but also, we have some juniors and potential PGs that are also on this call, and I'm going to start with you, Nick. How has that transition been? And I know you mentioned it a little bit with, guys telling you to come sit with them, but how is that transition with the community as a new senior?
I can say that it takes you out of your comfort zone. Like the kids invited me to talk. Like I necessarily, when they invited me, I didn't know what to say, because like I don't know these kids, but them kind of talking, just asking simple questions like, where am I from? Or what do I like to do and stuff like that. It kind of like forcing me to talk. It gives me more and more confidence to where like, oh, it's not bad to just get to know people, or it's not bad to ask things that you don't know and stuff like that. So that's what you're saying.
And Jude, what about, and again, I know your experience is a little different because you're living with underclassmen, but I commend you just because, I see you in the dining hall, and your dorm brothers come sit near you. They might not be at your table, but they come sit near you. So what, just that community feel for someone from across the country, how do you feel like Trinity-Pawling, what is it that Trinity-Pawling does to make you feel comfortable in not only in this environment, but also in your own skin?
I think just the process of allowing everyone to be so close together and having that tight community. It's almost like even if you don't want to get to know someone, you're going to get to know them. Yeah, I mean, I've gotten to know these guys, and I never thought that I would be able to get this close with kids from, so far away. And now that I have, I don't regret anything. Don't regret my decision coming here.
That's great. That's great. I'm going to just answer a couple of quick questions that have come in, and just so that I can get to a couple of them, but a lot had to do with residential life. And in the in our time now, right now, the majority of the students at Trinity-Pawling are in singles. But on a normal year, a question was about roommates, and the school will 99% of the time put kids together that we think would be the right fit. The admissions office works with the residential life office to make those partnerships as roommates. 99% of the time they work. And sometimes we have to make adjustments or have come together and have meetings. And even when I was a student, I changed roommates my freshman year just because we felt like we were still in the same dorm. We were across the hall from each other, but, just making those opportunities for kids to have good experience is something that's very important. Majority of the rooms are doubles at Trinity-Pawling. Some have singles, but we also have some larger rooms that are triples. And again, that when we put 3 people in a room together, we're really making sure that our hope is that they're going to have common interests, and so that it's a good opportunity for them to get to know each other and be a part of life together early on in September and October. A question came in about dress code. And so, Mr. Taylor, do you want to hit on that quickly, just in terms of where we are now, but where we also have been for over 100 years?
Yeah, the typical dress code, the guys are wearing it right now for class. It would be a tie, jacket and tie, and during the academic day. And that is really done to emphasize that there are certain things that we do with greater levels of respect for. Maybe 30 years ago, the response would have been, well, you're preparing them for the work life, but that, sometimes is not the case nowadays. This year, thus far, we've been using our neat informal dress code. So no tie and no jacket. And the reason for that is really twofold. One, we're asking a lot of the guys to follow the health protocols, the masks, the distancing. And so we decided to sort of step back in some of the other things that we were asking. And the other thing is more of a practical health matter. And that is that most guys, when they come here, probably have 2 at the most jackets. And they typically don't send them off to the cleaners very often. And right, guys? and so with the whole focus on the health, we wanted to make sure that we weren't creating a situation where, guys were not washing their jackets, keeping them cleaner in the midst of a pandemic. So there are two reasons for that change this year.
Great, thank you. And so I think, as I promised, I'm actually 4 minutes over my promise to you all. And the gentleman on this call, as some of you probably heard the bell, but study hall has begun. And but I want to reinforce what I said to you a little while ago, is that if you do have further questions, you can obviously email the admissions office, our faculty, if you have specific questions, maybe regarding academics more or athletics, please go to the website. Our faculty are on the website, and you can reach out. If you have a special interest in something particular, don't hesitate to send an email. We also are going to continue with these Pride Perspectives, and they'll all have a little bit of a different feel to them. Next week, we actually have a conversation with our arts department. And so it'll be a great opportunity for you to hear from them and all the different and creative ways that we're doing traditional and classic art to theater to music. And that's instrumental and in our choir and Trinitone. So please come back and chime in for the arts at Trinity-Pawling. And we will have some more of these Pride Perspectives in November, December, and throughout the year. So, and again, in terms of admissions, we will be offering on-campus tours November 23rd through December. So please reach out. For those of you who have scheduled them, we look forward to seeing you. And for those of you who haven't, please give us a call, send us an email. We look forward to seeing you on campus in the coming weeks. So as I sign off on behalf of this great panel, thank you, Nick, Jude, Harry, Mikey, Mr. Weber, Mrs. Lidl, and Mr. Taylor for joining us, taking the time to talk about their experience. The best way to find out about a school is through the people who live and work here. So I hope you got a little flavor into what makes Trinity-Pawling unique, why a Trinity-Pawling education and experience is so important in the lives of these young men, and also alums, as you heard. It's a life-changing experience. And we hope that all of you can have a little part of that moving forward. So on behalf of this panel, I thank you for joining us. We hope to see you again on another Pride Perspective in the coming weeks. And more importantly, we hope to see you on this campus in the near future. So thank you again. Be healthy, be safe, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks, everyone.